Hey people, welcome to the Run Test. It's Kieran here, and in this video Nick and I are going to be comparing two race-ready, big-ticket, high-stack, carbon-plated super shoes. These are the kings probably of the super shoe market. We're going to be looking at whether or not the Alphafly Next Percent 2 is going to be toppled by the brand new Saucony Endorphin Elite. The next 10 minutes we're going to walk you through these shoes in their entirety, including how they run, how they fit, what they do, what they're best at. Is one of them better than the other? What should you be spending your money on? Watch on to find out. So first up, let's go over some key details then. Well, you're going to get exactly the same drop in both of these shoes. That's an 8mm drop in both cases. And now Nike doesn't report the official kind of stack height of the Alphafly Next Percent 2, but the widely held agreement is that it comes in at 40mm in the heel and 32 in the forefoot. That's exactly the same as the Endorphin Elite. Weight-wise, in a men's UK 8.5, the Endorphin Elite come in at 211 grams or 7.5 ounces, whilst the Alphafly Next Percent 2 come in at 246 grams or 8.6 ounces. When it comes to price, the Endorphin Elite is going to set you back £280. Didn't have a US price at the time of recording this, but hopefully I'm going to flash that up on the screen now. The Alphafly Next Percent 2 is $269.95 in the UK or $275. So some quick design highlights as well then. Well, the Saucony Endorphin Elite has race legal measurements and it's made for racing. You've got a midsole that's made from Power Run HT foam, which Saucony says is its most energy efficient yet. You've got a heel-to-toe carbon plate with a slotted design to deliver stiffness from heel to toe, but also flex from medial to lateral sides. There's a Power Run Plus sock liner, a decent coverage of outsole rubber in the forefoot and in the heel, and nicely vented uppers. When it comes to the Alphafly Next Percent 2, this is a shoe that we've talked about an awful lot. It has a big stack of that ZoomX midsole foam, and it's Nike's lightest and most resilient foam. You've got a full-length curved carbon plate that runs through the midsole, and you've got two Nike Air Zoom pods to help give a bit of firmness underfoot at the back of the forefoot. Under those pods, you're now getting an additional layer of ZoomX foam. You've also got a slightly wider heel, and that aims to improve stability and help the transition through changes of pace. It's also wider at the forefoot than the Alphafly 1, again creating a slightly wider base to run off. And you've also got a reshaped wedge at the back that's not so pointy. The upper now features Atom Knit 2.0, and there's a reworked toe box that's aimed to be a bit more breathable, and a reworked heel construction with more hugging support than the original Alphafly. So I'm also just going to rattle through some of the key differences holding the shoes up here, the really obvious differences in terms of the way that these shoes are designed. The first thing is that the Alphafly has a booty fit, so you've got this sort of entry. It's quite tight across the top, and if you've got high feet, it can be quite a struggle to get your foot into them, and that means that overall I think you get this kind of more hugging kind of race fit from the Alphafly Next Percent 2. I think there's arguably slightly less room in the toe box. You've got a more traditional tongue and laces combo here in the Saucony Endorphin Elite. The other major thing to notice here, obviously, the Endorphin Elite don't have any of those Air Zoom pods under the forefoot. You're also going to get traditional laces on the Saucony Endorphin Elite, whereas you've got the flat lock, kind of race lock laces on the Alphafly Next Percent 2. Another major difference here, I think, is into the kind of heel construction. The Elite 2 basically just have one, big sort of blob almost of heel cushioning that just sits at the top there. It sort of goes down a little bit low, but it's basically going to sit right at the kind of base of the Achilles. Whereas with the Alphafly Next Percent, you've got more cushioning that kind of goes right round and hugs the heel a little bit more, and to give a little bit more comfort overall when you're putting those on. Flip them over, and in terms of the outsole grip, you've got a far kind of smoother covering of rubber at the forefoot on the Elite than you do on the Alphafly Next Percent, which has some kind of textured grip up front, and also there's a little bit more textured grip into the kind of rear of the Alphafly 2. You've only got this sort of slight covering of protective rubber and grip rubber in the heel here on the Elite. And overall, I think just in terms of the design, I feel like the upper design on the Elite is just a little bit more fussy than it is on the Alphafly Next Percent 2. This is quite simple, you've got almost like a one piece with the booty fit, there's not too many moving parts. I do worry a little bit when you're pulling whether or not these quite essential kind of pulls will ever break off, but the stitching is held firm in the miles that I've done so far. With the Saucony Endorphin Elite, I do worry about this kind of heel tab becoming a little bit more kind of, it sort of collapses right down, then you've got these extra kind of external bits, also the same on the sides, your supports up the sides, sort of separate from the inners here of the uppers, and I just worry about all these parts kind of collapsing over time and not kind of fitting as nicely as they do in those early miles. But it hasn't happened yet, but we will see.
So I don't have any real concerns about the fit of either of these shoes. Both of them fit me very well, true to size. I think the Alphafly's got a very comfortable and supportive fit around the heel, but I haven't really had any problems with the Elite despite its slightly strange upper. So yeah, all good, true to size.
Now when it comes to the run test, I have done hundreds of miles in the Alphafly Next Percent 2. This has sort of become pretty much my go-to race shoe over most distances. I've run marathons all out in them. I've done halves, I've done intervals, I've done all-out mile tests. You name it, I've pretty much put this shoe through that test. Long, slow plods. I've done marathons where I've been hanging out my arse at the end of the run to see how well they cope when you're feeling a bit more ragged. By contrast, I've put about 50 plus miles into the Saucony Endorphin Elite. I have done a solo marathon at marathon pace. I've done a half marathon on a track, I've done an all-out mile, I've done interval sessions, and I've done an all-out sub 19 minute 5k in these, so put them through kind of faster paces as well. So I've pretty much tested them in terms of kind of the types of paces on tarmac and road, the same kind of runs, but I've just put more miles into the Alphafly than I have into the Saucony Endorphin Elite. I've also done a side-by-side mile where I wore the Alphafly on one foot and the Elite on the other foot, and here's what I found. So I've just done the mile test with one Alphafly Next Percent 2 on the left foot, and I've got the Endorphin Elite on the right foot, just to compare these shoes. And yeah, a couple of things that are really interesting. The Elite are definitely slightly firmer. These are both big kind of squishy shoes, but they're definitely a little bit firmer. They're a little bit more stable as a result. I think the landing kind of platform doesn't have quite so much wobble in it as you get with the Alphaflys. But what you're sort of missing then, I don't think you quite get the return response from the foam that you do with the Alphafly 2. So I think the Alphaflys are actually a little bit punchier. You get a little bit more back, but I think that's going to really depend on whether or not you know, if you like to have a race shoe that maybe feels, you know, a little bit more stable, it isn't quite so wobbly, then maybe the Elites are going to be quite a good balance actually, particularly when you kind of get maybe later into a race where you want something that's a little bit more forgiving in terms of your overall kind of form going a bit ragged. But yeah, on the uppers, actually, both on one on each foot, it's quite a similar feel really. I think the toe boxes are both sort of nice and wide. If anything, I think the Alphafly Next Percent sort of hug a little bit more across the midfoot. That's, you know, you've got that kind of booty fit that you don't get on the Elite. Here, that's kind of laced down. And yeah, that's sort of tight and snug. Then you've got to kind of like that. It makes the Alphaflys a little bit more tricky to get into. But in terms of the way you kind of splay out into the toe box, I think you're getting a similar amount of room here. I think you get a similar kind of lockdown hold into the heel on both of these shoes. There's not too much to choose in terms of the comfort. For me, in that kind of short run, they're pretty much on a par there. What the main difference here is what happens underfoot. And I would say definitely the Alphafly are offering a little bit more spring, a little bit softer cushioning, but then there's a bit of return. By contrast, the Elites are a little bit firmer underfoot. There's a little bit less compression in that midsole foam. And as a result, I don't think it springs back quite so much, but we're talking about margins here. So yeah, from my run tests, I do think that Saucony with the Elite has produced a race shoe here that's good over a range of distances. I think it's up there, close to rivaling the Nike Alphafly Next Percent 2. And it's one that I'd take careful consideration about which one I would go out and race in if performance was the only thing that I was considering here. Overall, I still think that the Alphafly is a little bit more responsive. I think you get a little bit more energy from it. I think it's a little bit more leg saving than the Saucony Endorphin Elite, but the Elite runs it a real close race here. And I think, again, I think maybe if you prefer something that's just marginally more stable, I think if you want something that's going to give you an easier kind of entry and a little bit more, I don't know, I find the Alphafly Next Percent a little bit hard to get on. I find it easy to find a sort of comfort, sort of immediate fit in the Saucony Endorphin Elite. If that's something you're after, then I think the Elite might be the way to go. But yeah, on those run tests, these are both shoes that I think many people are going to be able to run fast in and enjoy running in over race distances.
So the Alphafly 2 was one of my favourite new racing shoes of 2022. It's a big shoe, it's an ugly shoe, it's a pretty heavy shoe, but it's really undeniably effective when it comes to racing, especially long distances. I capped off my year by using it at the Valencia Marathon, ran a 2:29 in the shoe, and I've also done 5 miles, net my 5 mile PB in the shoe, and a 10k race, and it really does surprise me almost every time I pull it on and try and run fast, because when you look at it, you think, it just can't be that fast. Look at it, look how big it is. But when you start running, hitting your straps, it's just brilliant. You really can lock into a pace, get a huge amount of bounce from the cushioning and the pods in the shoe, and it just helps you hold on to those paces. Like certainly at the back end of the Valencia Marathon, the shoe had protected my legs really well throughout the race, but was still helping me tick over speedily for that final 6K and hold the pace I was looking for. And yeah, I can't really fault it for that. Like, I don't think it's the most nimble shoe in the world. I don't think it's the most agile shoe. Like, on shorter races, it's not necessarily ideal in that last K when you're trying to just turn over and kick for home, but it's still quick, and you can just lock into it and use it for a great range of paces really well, and it's really comfortable. I think I've done multiple 20 milers in this shoe in training as well as racing the Valencia Marathon, and I always enjoy pulling it on. It's comfortable, protects legs really well, really noticeable how good my legs feel the day after doing a long run in this shoe. Like, even after the Valencia Marathon, I was there on a family holiday and to go walking around zoos and stuff and was fine. It's just a really great example of what modern day carbon shoes can do without necessarily having the most aggressive feel. It's still very fast and protective. The Elite is a shoe that is more aggressive and firm and punchy, and it feels fantastic when you're running quick, but it's not as accommodating as the Alphafly. I'd say that. Like, it's got a harsher feel, but certainly an efficient one when you are running hard. And I've done 5K and 10K kind of race efforts in this shoe and just really enjoyed it. Like, I think it's a fantastic shoe. It's very fast, it's nimble, it's more nimble and agile than the Alphafly. You can attack corners a bit better in it. It's still got a high stack, but the lighter, more agile feel of it does help when you're doing those shorter reps and shorter races. But then the converse of that is it going to be too harsh for people to use for the marathon compared to the Alphafly 2? I think the Alphafly 2 is certainly more comfortable, and you're getting that kind of booming bounce forward from the Zoom X foam, but it's not that tippy forward, snappy feeling that you get from the Elite, which does start to wear and create a bit of foot fatigue over time. So when you're hitting your straps, the Elite feels great, but if you drop off it and you're just trying to hold on while still running a good pace at the end of the marathon, I think that's where a shoe like the Alphafly really shines, and I'm not convinced this will in the same way for lots of people because it is that bit more aggressive. Looking at the shoes in Nike's range, I think when I saw the Endorphin Elite, I thought it would be quite akin to the Alphafly as the more expensive, even more cushioned version of their racing shoe, the Endorphin Pro 3. But actually, in terms of ride feel, I think the Elite feels a lot more like the Vaporfly to me. It's really got a fast transition, big snap forward, big aggressive toe off, and that's great. I love the Vaporfly. I ran my marathon PB in Berlin last year in the Vaporfly, and I really appreciate the firmer feel of that shoe at times. But I think a lot of the time, that shoes like the Alphafly, the Adios Pro 3 are just bigger stacks of cushioning that provide a very, very powerful propulsive ride, but in a less aggressive way, I think work a little bit better for the marathon. How they protect your legs deep into the race and make you feel good while still being quick enough for the end. But in terms of raw speed, I think the Elite has it over those short distances.
So my verdict then, it's really quite simple. The Alphafly Next Percent 2 is probably my favourite race shoe of the moment up until the Endorphin Elite came out. Does the Endorphin Elite kind of topple it and replace it? I think the answer for me is it gets very, very close, but not quite. I don't think it's quite as punchy. I don't think it's quite as kind of all-out racy. I don't think it saves the legs as much later into the race as the Alphafly does. And I think the Alphafly Next Percent is still be my kind of go-to choice over a big range of distances. And I think really though, the major deciding factor is that the Alphafly Next Percent was already a very expensive shoe. And I think the Saucony Endorphin Elite coming in, £10 more expensive, I just don't think it's offering enough to warrant that extra bump up in price. If they'd have put the Saucony Endorphin Elite at like £250 or a little bit, further down, then I think there'd actually be a really, really good argument that you would go out and buy the Elite and race in it over the marathon distance. But for me, if I'm picking one shoe and I'm spending my money, I'm afraid it's still going to be the Nike Alphafly Next Percent 2.
So I think these are two surprisingly different carbon shoes for me in how they feel on the run, even though they will both be great racers for events at any distance, really. They're both terrific racing shoes, so there is a very different ride feel. And if you're someone, when the Alphafly 2 came out last year, who went, oh, it's too big, it's too cruisy, it doesn't feel like I want from a racing shoe, then maybe the Endorphin Elite will be the one to go for, because it does have a very racy feel to it, aggressive, firm. And it's so exciting to put it on at times. Like, I really love running quick in it. It's just a great racing shoe, and it's one I naturally reach for when I'm thinking about running fast, but at the same time if I really think about it a bit more, a shoe like the Alphafly that is still very quick, is still very propulsive, but does so in a slightly less aggressive way that I think helps cushion the body a bit more. It's probably going to be the smarter pick for things like the marathon. It's the one I'd reach for a marathon out of these two for sure. And at shorter races, this is still a good short distance racing shoe, but this is lighter, nimbler. I think it has the edge over those distances for me. I like how it really helps you tip forward and tick over in the final Ks. days of things like 5Ks and 10Ks when your lactate's building up, you just keep turning it over in the shoe, whereas this does feel a bit big at those times, even if it is still fast. Price is not really a factor comparing these two for once, because they're both very overpriced, let's say it. So it might be a case of whichever you can find cheap at the time. The Alphafly 2 is starting to crop up in sales, but I think the bigger determinant will be what you want from your racing shoe. Are you someone who's looking at marathons in particular? You want a slightly more comfortable ride that's still very propulsive? Then the Alphafly 2 would be my pick then. If you're someone who likes a firmer, aggressive feel, something more like the Vaporfly, or you're mainly doing shorter events up to the half marathon, then I think the Elite would be the better pick for me. But yeah, both cracking shoes, worth considering if you are happy to splash out 280 quid on your racing shoe.
So there you have it. That has been our review of the Nike Alphafly Next Percent 2 up against the newcomer, the Saucony Endorphin Elite. Hope you've enjoyed the review. If you have any questions or comments, hit us up below. Ask us all the questions you want to know about the Saucony Endorphin Elite. There are a whole ton of videos out comparing this Saucony Endorphin Elite shoe to other carbon-plated shoes on the channel around about now. There's a full review as well, a multi-tester review, so go check that out on the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell so you can hear about when all our other upcoming content lands on the channel. It's been a total pleasure to talk to you about these shoes. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll hope to see you again soon on the Run Testers.